Keptn documentation is maturing along with the Keptn software. You may have noticed some changes in the documentation and heard rumors of changes that are planned. My name is Meg McRoberts, and I'm the Developer Content Lead for the Keptn project. In this video, I will bring you up to date on what is happening, what we call the documentation revamp, and talk about ways you can contribute if you would like. The documentation revamp has three major components: updating tools, restructuring content, adding and updating content. We are making incremental changes, so you won't see a big rollout when everything changes. Some changes have been made already, others are expected in the coming months. The biggest tool change is to implement a new doc engine that can support a large, complex documentation set. We need features such as true doc versioning, a search box for the documentation, and powerful multi-repo support. Rajiv Singh implemented much of Docusaurus as a Google Summer of Code 2022 project. We are evaluating whether Docusaurus multi-repo support is strong enough for our needs, and will make a decision soon about what tool set to use. Tutorials. Going forward, we want to use Killer Coda to provide interactive tutorials that do not require the user to install Keptn in order to explore some of its capabilities. The new Explore Keptn document uses this approach to replace the old Quick Start. Thanks to Afzal Ansari for driving this move to Killer Coda and doing the first implementation. It was a fabulous addition here. We need people to develop and maintain additional interactive tutorials. We especially need tutorials for more advanced topics. When it comes to content and structure, we've identified some issues. It can be difficult to find the information one needs. There's an overemphasis on docs for new to Keptn users, not enough material for advanced users. There's a great deal of redundancy and duplication, which can lead to conflicting information and material that doesn't get updated when it should. We've made some structural changes to address these issues. The Keptn LTS docs will have all subsections at the same level, rather than having some at the top level and others under release-specific sections. We've also created sections that consolidate the information for installation, working with projects, and defining project functionality. We've started to create reference pages for configurations and miscellaneous to supplement the reference pages for CLI commands and API functions that have always been there. We're adding differences between version sections to each page as appropriate, and including links to the software source. We have a new installation section. It has subpages for all sorts of installation topics, some of which are optional, some of which are not. Hidden under, because of our current CSS, I hope this will be fixed in the new tools. Underneath, if you scroll past all of the cards for the individual sections, we have a sequential reference list of the the steps that you need to take to install Keptn for anything. Again, some of these are optional, some are required, some are for production systems only, some are for exploratory demonstration study sessions only. We were finding that a lot of people were using the old tutorials as a guide for how to actually set up their system, and that made for some problems, so we are attempting to fix that here. We need to add a lot more content, especially related to installing a production instance of Keptn. We need to make it very clear about differences in installation for study and demonstration versus production instance of Keptn. And we also need to add some information about how to install a development environment. The Managed Keptn projects section discusses what I consider the mechanics of working with projects. Pulls all the information together. These are general tasks that you're going to have to do no matter what sort of a Keptn project you're running. So you have to create a project, you have to create a service, um, delete a project, modify a project, manage tasks and sequences. These each have sequence sections in here. Uh, the define Keptn section is new. It this is supposed to have a number of pages on different topics that describe how to do a specific task, or what we would call a use case, for a project. Right now, it pretty much pulls together the information we had from the old set. This section needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of new materials. It doesn't have materials to reflect a lot of the newer functionality that's available with Keptn and more things that we're learning about how to do it. So we'll do some work. But in the meanwhile, because it's always going to be miscellaneous, we're going to have a little pathway here, a quick description of what's here, different things one can do, and each of them, of course, link into one of the pages where you have details and examples. Reference pages. Of course, we've always had reference pages for the CLI commands and the API functions. We've started to create reference pages for configurations or files, and for miscellaneous information. We're adding differences between version sections to these pages as appropriate. We need more pages, more content, and better structure. We're still figuring out what structure we'll use. We'll very quickly look at this. You can look at the more in configurations. For instance, I should set that up differently. You see, we've got a page for shipyard. We've got a page for the remediation configuration file, SLI, SLO, the values.yaml file, the main file that describes the Helm service that you can use to install. Again, this section, it's a good start. It's a place, for instance, if you look in the shipyard, you'll find all sorts of details about the specific things that you can do and can't do, various details in here. Fairly comprehensive information, and we'll keep working to make it more and more comprehensive. We have a couple of miscellaneous sections. We have one for the distributor that lists all the environmental variables, all the environment variables the distributor recognizes. And we have a page for Keptn Cloud events. Expect to see more content here. So, the Keptn documentation belongs to the community, and we need everyone's help to achieve the quality we want. So how can you help? We have a growing list of contributors at all levels. More contributions we get, the faster the docs can improve. Excuse me. For starters, how can you help? Join the discussion at Keptn Docs. So we have our own Slack channel. Lots of nice people there. You can ask questions, answer questions, participate in discussions. Also, come and join our community and development meetings. They are every other week. We have a community meeting, and in the intervening weeks we have development meetings. There's a link here to a page that has schedules and calendars, a link to RSVP, minutes and links for previous meetings, and you can add an item if you want to discuss something. Just go ahead and add it to the agenda of an upcoming meeting and you will be called upon. So ways you can help. Lots and lots of ways. Of course, contribute content. If you know something that's not in the docs, please write it up and submit a PR. Or lacking that, create an issue and put the information in there so that somebody else could write it up and submit the PR. The docs repo has a list of open issues for tasks that need to be done. We try to keep some of them being good first issues available for people who are just looking to something to add. But there's lesser ways. If you're not a writer, whatever. Review and test the docs. Just pull out an old doc and go through and try to follow the procedure and see if it works. If you find errors or omissions, you can submit a PR to correct it, or you can file an issue identifying material. Review open PRs, and I'm sure we're going to need some help implementing the new doc engine. We do adhere to documentation as code practices. This means docs are authored using Markdown, stored in a GitHub repository, tracked with issues, updated with PRs, and that are subject to the same discipline used for software. We need to augment this with the ability to import doc source from the software repositories, and then we will be able to keep most of the doc, especially the highly technical materials, adjacent to the software it supports, and hopefully keep them in sync better. Brief introduction of the authoring tools. Docs are authored in Markdown. They're stored in GitHub. Here's a link to the docs repo. It's github.com/keptn/keptn.github.io. Currently, the documentation is built with Hugo. The repo has a contributing.md file with details about how to set up your local environment and build the docs locally. Feel free to come in and ask questions in Keptn docs if you need anything else. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please post them in the Keptn Docs Slack channel, or you can contact me directly on Keptn Slack.